FromSoft recently released the first trailer and promotional images for the upcoming Dark Souls 3 DLC, Ashes of Ariandel. The first of 2 planned DLCs is scheduled for release on October 25th. Back on August 10th, I posted a video with my speculations on the new DLC content, and after reviewing the trailer for Ashes of Ariandel, I think it fits nicely with one of my ideas from that previous video. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but first, let's take a closer look at the trailer and try to predict how it fits into the lore of Dark Souls 3. At the beginning, we see a knight marching into a blizzard. Might this be an unexplored area of the Boreal Valley? Here we see a pair of soldiers plodding along. Notice the pointed helms, very reminiscent of the Undead Legion helm, or possibly the helm from the Sunset armor. This woman looks like she's wearing a nun's habit. It's a safe bet to say that she is a faith-based character. Here we see a character kneeling over a basin and performing self-flagellation. The notched whip found in the cleansing chapel states it was used to draw blood for use in rituals. This next shot takes place in a room that looks suspiciously like the cleansing chapel. Could this be one such blood ritual? Here is another look at the tormented character, pinned down with his face in the basin. Notice the black feathers. Back to the next shot, we see an armored figure kneeling in prayer, or possibly begging for forgiveness. We see the pointed helm again, and the armor seems to have the golden hues of Hodrick's Sunset armor.
Then show my lady flame.
That sounds like an important line. She reminds me of the doll from Bloodborne, or maybe even the Firekeeper. What is the relevance of this flat surface she seems to be focusing on? Here is one of the images FromSoft posted on Facebook. It appears to be concept art for our white-haired friend. Is this a new character, or a different version of someone we have met before? Fast forward through this. A large wolf. You just have to think Sif when you see that. Now, this is particularly interesting. A rope bridge leading to a snowy area. Here's a different angle. This seems oddly familiar. These guys look like they should be Bloodborne enemies. Here is another look at the fly person. Notice the debris and corpses. Here is some kind of barbarian with a twin-headed axe, somewhat similar to Eleonora. He also wears a helmet adorned with moose antlers. I am hoping this is a weapon art we can use. Here's a look at another new weapon. This is a little bit better look at it. It looks like a greatsword with a blade designed like chain links. In both instances, the sword is buffed with what appears to be black flame. The animation suggests that it is a self-buff, but it could be a new resin or even a spell. Here's a cleric throwing a light boomerang in the catacombs. Here's that same miracle again, but in the undead settlement. That looks like that could be a useful spell. Now the player is surrounded by wolves, but they don't show signs of hollowing like the other hounds in Dark Souls 3 tend to. At first, I thought the character was using a new weapon, but it looks like it's the Storm Curve Sword instead. That must be an annoying ambush. Looks like the torch gets an interesting new use, demonstrated here on Irathilian slaves. This sorcerer shows off a frost spell. Here's another look at it. It's hard to tell if it's a single-shot spell like Soul Spear, or if it's a continuous spray like Fire Surge. I hope for the latter. Back to our conehead friend, this time clutching a bloody parchment. Or maybe it's a bit of canvas. Here's another look at it.
The ashes have come at last.
Is he giving it to the player, or is this another NPC? Blood seeps towards this bowl, and it looks like it's the same one we saw earlier. Fast forward through this stuff. Here is someone dressed like that old crow Cornix. They're hanging out in the untended graves, and there appear to be tiny ghosts ascending from their body. This really caught my attention. Black feathers, and those hands. They look just like a bird's talons. Here's some beautiful architecture collapsing in flame. This is that same basin again, but now it's filled with fire. These bird hands should look familiar now too. And here's the end. Now let's take a look at a few more images. FromSoft promised new multiplayer features. This must be a glimpse of that. Here's the knight walking through the blizzard again, but this time he encounters a tall, slim figure with long hair. It's hard to say if this is an enemy or an NPC. Then there's this bit of concept art. It looks like a mangy crow-human hybrid. Frankly, this whole thing reeks of Velka. Early in the trailer, the narrator says,
If you are like us, another forlorn soul.
This is a subtle hint, and if you look at items with the word forlorn in them, those items belong to the Corvian Crow people. Most notably is a line from the storyteller's staff, which reads, Staff of a heretic storyteller, who shares tales of the painted world to forlorn souls. Remember this shot? Doesn't this remind you of entering the painted world of Ariamis? Even the name Ariandel has the same root word as Ariamis. So it seems we will be entering a different snowy land than the Boreal Valley. Or maybe we won't be so far from Irithyll after all. What if the snow we once saw in the painted world is somehow related to the frost of the Boreal Valley? If manipulating the painting, or even destroying it, somehow merged the once hidden world with the lands of Irithyll, this could explain why Yorshka is found in Andor Londo, and the strange coincidence that you need a special doll to enter both of those places. In my previous DLC speculation video, I predicted that we would learn more about the profane capital and the flame that destroyed it. Could the Ashes of Ariandel actually be the history of the profaned capital? Some of the adjoining locations show striking similarities to places in the trailer. In the Japanese version of Dark Souls 3, the profaned capital goes by a different name. It's called the City of Sin, and the profane flame is called the Fire of Sin. Sin is generally associated with Velka, but fire and sin have been connected before. There was the first sin, where Gwen linked the flame, unnaturally prolonging the Age of Fire. Then there was the Witch of Izalith, who tried to recreate the first flame, but birthed chaos instead. Is the profaned flame the re-emergence of one of these two sinful flames, or something new entirely? Am I completely off basis by thinking that the Ashes of Ariandel has any link to the profaned flame whatsoever? Tell me about your theories in the comments below. Whether my speculations are spot on or just completely misguided, I think it's safe to assume that this first DLC is going to have a lot of clarifying lore surrounding Velka. Something the Souls fans have been craving since the first Dark Souls came out back in 2011. October 25th can't come soon enough.